So this is going to be a really quick lesson just to have a look at the way that AI writes versus how humans write. Because in the last few weeks and probably months, I've had students asking me loads about AI. I've used AI myself to actually write some example answers for students, and I've kind of messed around with getting it to write essays and exam answers. So yeah, I thought I'd just give you my opinion on how it writes and what's good about it, what's not so good about it. Obviously, in an exam or a real official situation, you should never use AI rather than your own writing because it's just not your own answer. If you got found out, you'd be in tons of trouble. Even if you didn't get found out, your grade isn't actually officially your grade. It's not an indication of your personal level. So it's bad for yourself if you just kind of cheat by using AI as much as it is bad generally. But it's very interesting AI, and it can be used in lots of different ways to give you ideas and inspiration on things or to help you understand concepts. So yeah, I've been trying to integrate it into my teaching and trying to get students to use it in the right way, in ways that are super helpful rather than just trying to replace their own work. So yeah, I was looking at a Cambridge IGCSE descriptive writing question from June 2021. Write a description with the title "The View from the Other Side." These kinds of titles are very vague and sort of general, so you might think a computer doesn't really know what to do with that or wouldn't have any ideas about that. Interestingly, AI did come up with some really interesting and quite complex, I think, images, quite beautiful images at times. So we'll have a quick look through what it came up with as an answer. I did tell it to write using poetic devices, complex vocabulary, and I gave it a range of different features as well to sort of include into the writing rather than just giving it the question, because if I just gave it the question, the answer would be useless. So I did prompt it quite a lot to achieve this answer. So yeah, I'm just going to read you like a paragraph from it, but I'll scroll down so you can read the whole thing if you want to. The view from the other side. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting its last golden rays across the world, I found myself standing on the precipice of a world unknown, gazing upon the view from the other side. The air, tinged with a hint of the sea, whispered through the tall grasses that swayed in the gentle breeze. It carried with it the aroma of salt and adventure, tickling my senses and filling my lungs with the essence of discovery. Before me, a vast expanse stretched out like an artist's canvas, painted with hues of azure and cerulean. The ocean, a shimmering tapestry, danced and shimmered under the fading light, its waves crashing against the rocky cliffs below, sending forth a symphony of crashing crescendos. Each surge of water reached towards the heavens like a celestial orchestra playing its grandest symphony. And then there's, different focal points per paragraph, which is what you would expect from a descriptive writing piece. So a flock of seagulls circled above. The distant mountains stood proud and majestic. Down below, a quaint village came alive. So it is actually really good at doing the different focal points that's required for creative writing. So each paragraph is on a different topic, and it's going kind of section by section through this landscape to help it come alive for the reader. So yeah, one thing that's good is it is good at its kind of focal points and its different topics per paragraph. It goes on for quite a while as well, you can see. It has a sense of narrative voice, so it's I, the character, is kind of observing the landscape using first person. And and they're observing in quite a kind of detailed way as well. So there's a lot of imagery. I did tell it to use lots of imagery, so it kind of went a bit overboard here. So yeah, some good things about it. Good vocabulary, a range of techniques and features being used. So you could say, the sun dipped behind the right horizon, casting its last golden rays. That's kind of got a certain tone and mood to it, which is sustained throughout. And it's also like a kind of personification, maybe, if you're stretching a little bit, it could be. Some nice little phrases, tinged with a hint of the sea, the air. Nice little olfactory image there, smell image. And this idea of discovery. There's a sense of like anticipation about this world. So yeah, it's quite good. And you might be thinking, I can't write like this. No one can really. It's kind of just invented its own thing here. So certain things that it does, it sounds brilliant. But there's a lot of things it's not doing as well. So I'm going to focus now on what's not so great about it. If you're interested in kind of finding out for yourself, you might want to have a look at the mark scheme and compare and contrast the mark scheme with this answer, see what is missing as well as what is there. And then, if you're not sure on your own, I'll go through with I'll go through it with you now. Struggling to form that sentence for some reason. So it uses this title in a very literal way, gazing upon the view from the other side. And you'll notice it actually repeats that at the end as well. So it's trying to be very literal, like, here is my view that I'm describing from the other side. It doesn't explain what the other side is, the other side of what, where we are or where we're looking. So the overall themes and kind of messages and deeper meanings are completely out of the picture with this answer. So you might have thought while you're reading it, I can picture all the individual images and sentences, but I have no idea what the whole scene is or what's going on. Obviously, there's a sea, there's, seagulls, mountains, and a village. So we do have these kind of almost generic like elements of the landscape. But there's not really a sense of like, what are they viewing the other side of what? How have they interpreted that question? So it's not done any human processing on that question. It's literally just trying to describe it in a sort of straightforward way. So yeah, that's, I think, maybe the biggest thing that's missing from it. There's other things like the punctuation is very basic. The sentence lengths are kind of all regular. There's no control over the things that, a writer would be able to control. Like when you're a writer, you control your audience's reaction to the language, and you unfold the scene in a very conscious, deliberate way because you know what they're thinking and how they're experiencing your world. Obviously, because it's AI, it's got no sense of how to do that. There's also kind of no characters, no dialogue. There's a very sort of like flat sense of what's going on here. And yeah, it sounds great on the surface, but as soon as you go kind of deeper into the like, meaning of what is this actually trying to do, you come unstuck quite quickly. Like it's just a lot of very nice images packed in one after another with no deeper meaning and also no coherence. So coherence is like the whole thing should have a feeling, like a purpose to it. And there's no overarching purpose. It's just kind of randomly describing little details. So this would achieve, if I was going to mark it as, an IGCSE or GCSE exam, probably like at least a B grade. I think it's decent. But it's just not, it doesn't have like any kind of, I think, like the human element of awareness of your audience or how you're revealing things to your audience or what you want to do, with your audience's emotions or their thoughts while you're writing. So it kind of foregrounds to you the important bits of writing. It's not just about making, fancy words into a grammatically correct sentence on the page. That's what AI can do very well. What it's about is engaging your reader, making them think things, making them feel, being aware of how they're experiencing your world, and slowly revealing things, about your world to them that changes their perception as you're going along. So the best writers have this sense of really understanding their readers' emotions and sort of playing around with those emotions as we read through. There's a couple of really nice examples that are similar to this that I would recommend reading from, just literature in general. So there's a story called At the Bay by Catherine Mansfield. The whole thing is quite long. I mean, it's an amazing story to read the whole thing anyway. But if you don't have time, I'd recommend reading like maybe the first 2 pages of that. if you read that, you can kind of compare and contrast her scene, which is an ocean scene, full of kind of mystery. It's sort of describing a beach in New Zealand in the early morning. And it just has the human element to it. It has a bit of a, emotion and control, which is missing here. There's also an AQA paper that is by Daphne du Maurier. I think it's from what's it called? That book she did, Jamaican. Yeah, so there's like a little extract about this kind of carriage of people going through the landscape, and they are beset by really difficult weather. And that also is, highly descriptive passage that's describing kind of different focal points, and it's really well written, but again has that human element. So if you're interested in, the difference between like proper literature and what AI writes, have a look at those two. If you're interested in how would a human write The View from the Other Side, you just hang on, because I'll go I'll go through what I wrote now with you. So I wrote an answer to the exact same question. I planned it a little bit first. And the first thing I did with my plan was not to think of all these little images and sentences that I'm trying to make. Instead, what I did was I thought about what are my main themes and ideas, and what does this actual title mean in terms of my piece. So yeah, I had an idea about The View from the Other Side, not actually being revealed what that meant until the final section. So there's a twist in the final section of my my piece. So I recently went to the Chelsea Flower Show with my parents for the first time, and it was quite manic and crazy and full of flowers. So this was inspired by a real experience that I had of going to a flower market, and seeing how chaotic it can be. And and I thought the idea of The View from the Other Side might be that actually it turns out the speaker is a ghost, and she always used to go to this market when she's alive, but now she's viewing it kind of from the other side of life, where she's dead and she's looking at all these living people. So the twist is that the other side is actually like her passing on. So you can see that my themes, or my main idea, is set out well before I do any of those little details of the language, or the sentence structures, or the poetic devices. All of that is going to reinforce my main idea. So I'll just read you like a couple of paragraphs of this again, just to sort of make it time efficient, and feel free to read through the whole thing if you want, especially the twist at the end if you're interested in how I achieved that. So I'll just read you a few paragraphs, and then I'll give you like an analysis of my own work. Early on Sunday morning, a fine grey mist swirls through the stalls at the flower market, settling little dewdrops on buds and leaves. Stall owners in gilets and green galoshes sit around gossiping and sipping steaming cups of coffee as they await the onslaught of purchasers that will soon flood the place. As the sun rises, people trickle in. The flowers, too, open slowly in the sun, spreading their petals wide with a huge sleepy yawn. The pale dawn sunlight casts a vintage filter over the scene, muting the giant loud yellow of the sunflowers, amplifying the deep crimson roses. Like bees, people meander from one stall to the next, drawn by the perfume of flowers, their bright colours and their beautiful shapes. What on earth were you thinking? It's too early for Candy Floss. She's not even had her breakfast yet. In the centre of the market, a couple argue about their child, a little girl, dressed in a bucket hat with bright red wellies. She chews her fluffy blue cloud on a stick and stares directly at me, tugging at her mother's skirt for attention. Her mother pays no notice. She continues berating her poor father. I'm nearly at the end, actually, so I'll just read the whole thing. People collect around one stall in particular, the secret garden. The lady who owns it looks like something from another time. She sits demurely in an antique rocking chair in a pinstripe linen dress with a messy blonde bun full of curls like pea tendrils. Unlike the lavender stall, which sells only lavender, or the tulip hut, which sells, you guessed it, this lady carefully curates her little shop to look like a perfect miniature garden, the kind you might find in an old country hall. Trailing purple wisteria frames the stall with dark, bushy hostas and ferns spreading out below. The inner walls are lined with jasmine, which spills its rich scent all over you if you brush by too closely. Peonies and irises add large large splashes of pink and purple to the dark backdrop. In the center of the stall, terracotta pots with giant citrus trees are clustered together, heavy with oranges and lemons. This place was always our favorite to visit, John and I, before he passed away. It's getting towards midday and the crowd is thick now, flowing fast around the stalls as people find themselves pushed forwards in a continuous motion. I stand still in the middle of them all, watching the faces blur as they move round me, even through me, as if I wasn't there. It seems to take an age, but finally I find it. The shock of white hair and a loose paisley silk shirt. John's face looks back at me, smiling. I knew I'd find him here. Yeah, so I figured I'd just read the whole thing because it gives you more of an effect of what's going on. So, yeah, the main idea with this is the imagery is more kind of there to prove a point. So the overall point is the view from the other side is she's dead, and you get a lot of foreshadowing of this. So the little girl here is just kind of chewing on a stick of candy floss and freaking out because she can see this ghost trying to get her mum to look at it, and the mum's ignoring her. And then at the end of this paragraph, it sort of seems a bit weird that the kid's obsessed with this woman. At the end of this paragraph, where they're talking about their favorite stall, she mentions that John has passed away. And then finally, at the end, we have the full kind of revelation, which is, I tried to render in quite a subtle way. So I stand still in the middle of this crowd, watching faces blur as they move around me, through me. So through me is a really strange, addition there, because instead of it just being, oh, she's standing still and everyone else is moving, it's kind of like, oh, they really don't see her. It's as if she's not there. They even walk through her. So it kind of shifts your perception ever so slightly there at the end. And then the revelation is that John is here too, and you realize, hopefully, I mean, it's not obviously stated, but hopefully you realize that they're ghosts and that they found each other at this market because it was their favorite place to go, and they realized that they would both be there looking for each other. So it's not a full story because it's a description, but you can see how all of the individual sentences build up into an intention or a purpose. So there's a kind of meaning or a core idea behind the writing. The individual, images, I would say AI did as well as me, and possibly even better because I wrote this in time conditions. I didn't actually look over it or spend any time refining my images, so I could, if I was going to make it like better, I would maybe go in and tweak the poetic devices to make them a bit more precise, or add some vocabulary, or that kind of thing. But generally, you can see that the standard of imagery and the standard of poetic devices is roughly similar, but there's not that consistency of what's going on. It's not just describing a scene, breaking it down with no real purpose, and it's not directly trying to put the quotation of the question in there. It's actually taking that question as a concept or an idea and then using my own kind of personal twist on that idea. So yeah, I just thought I'd show you a little bit of the differences. So if you're interested a bit more in this idea, I'd recommend doing this as your own challenge. So if you're practicing an exam question for creative writing, especially descriptive writing, go to an AI generator, like I use ChatGPT, and give it a question, and then write your own, and try and write your own better than AI, because it's actually quite life affirming if you write something and you're like, oh, this is actually, I can see why this is human and why it's superior to AI. So yeah, this was kind of like a fun exercise, but also hopefully quite useful and interesting for you. And I hope you guys are feeling a lot more confident with your writing now, and you've also learned something about how to do these descriptive pieces. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Go to scribbly.com if you want some useful tips and courses on creative writing and English language in general. And I'll hopefully see you guys soon in a future class. Bye for now.